Joyce Carol Oates's writing is close to witchcraft, which is a really interesting way to describe a Marilyn Monroe fictional biography, that it's like witchcraft, and she unravels the
Yes,
story of a
I
mythical
have that quote on
blonde.
the back of my copy too.
Really? Yeah, and
Yes,
I keep
yes,
hearing
and
this.
I that caught my eye.
Yeah, and GQ magazine says it's a mythic blowout, and even Playboy weighed in and said an imagining of hellish battles that Monroe fought with herself. Like, but it's all about her myth. So I found that that was an interesting, okay, how is
Yes,
this film going to really capture this Joyce Carol Oates' fictional retelling of Monroe's trauma through
right,
childhood and her mom? And
right.
That old black magic has me in its spell. That old black magic that you read so well. Those eyes say fingers of fame down my spine. The same old witchcraft when your eyes meet mine.
hi, Ivory Tower Boiler Room community. This is Andrew. I'm here with a former guest of ours. I'm so happy she's back, Elizabeth Winder. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
So I call her the eminent Marilyn Monroe scholar since she wrote Marilyn in Manhattan, Her Year of Joy. But like when it came to needing someone to dissect Blonde, which just came out on Netflix, um, and is based on Joyce Carol Oates's novel from 2002. Or 2000, I think. I was
Yeah.
I knew who I had to call, which is Elizabeth. I'm like, okay, we need to dissect this. We need to watch it like right before we do this recording. And we did. And we've messaged each other via text. So we might be I'll grab my phone to just see what was being processed as we were watching and going back and forth. But yeah, we haven't really discussed at all our visceral raw reaction. So like this is you all here are hearing it for the first time. So maybe Elizabeth, I'm just going to start with our preconceived notion. So right, you know that Blonde is coming out. It took a little while for it to come out on Netflix. There was like some
Yes.
controversy over its rating. Then it finally got an NC-17 rating, which is the first time on Netflix. So
Right.
there
Right.
was
There was
already
that whole thing.
yeah, so right, there was already
Right.
this publicity happening with
Yeah.
controversy. So like what did you think, okay, this film is going to do with Marilyn Monroe?
I really had no idea what it was going to do, but I can the feeling that I felt when this was coming out was a feeling of sort of like apprehension. Not, and that's not to say it was an all negative feeling. Not That's not the case at all. But it was kind of a like a nervousness because when it's Marilyn Monroe in general, you really don't know what people are going to give you, what they're going to try to focus on. It could be that highly stylized, glamorous cliche of Maryland that the layman sort the Maryland that the average person for do you know what I mean knows, or it could be something else. It could be. I was also because it's based on the I guess let's call it a fictional biography. That's sort of what I
Yes.
call Blonde. Um, and I first read Blonde when it came out in the year 2000, which was a long time ago at this point. And I do that novel, which I actually love, focuses so much on the trauma, Marilyn's trauma, and I think I was sort of apprehensive to just to see that and to see what the director and what the actors would do with that. So I mean, I was also interested in it, but I was nervous.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you started there with this fictional biography. I also think it's so interesting to me. Jean Maru, who like reviewed Blonde, said
Yes.
that Joyce Carol Oates's writing is close to witchcraft, which is a really interesting way to describe a Marilyn Monroe fictional biography, that it's like witchcraft, and she unravels the
Yes,
story of a
I
mythical
have that quote on
blonde.
the back of my copy too.
Really? Yeah.
Yes,
And I keep
yes,
hearing
and
this.
that caught my eye.
Yeah, and GQ magazine says it's a mythic blowout, and even Playboy weighed in and said an imagining of hellish battles that Monroe fought with herself. Like, but it's all about her myth. So I found that was an interesting. Okay, how is
Yes,
this film going to really capture this Joyce Carol Oates' fictional retelling of Monroe's trauma through
right,
childhood and her mom and
right.
um yeah, I mean, maybe just for the audience out there who hasn't read Blonde, I'll read the back synopsis for you all out there, just so it's in their minds, and then we'll just use that to
Right.
launch into the beginning of the film. But okay, so in her most ambitious work to date, Joyce Carol Oates boldly reimagines the inner poetic and spiritual life of Norma Jean Baker, the child, the woman, the faded celebrity, and idolized blonde the world came to know as Marilyn Monroe. In a voice startlingly intimate and rich, Norma Jean tells her own story of an emblematic American artist, intensely conflicted and driven, who had lost her way. A powerful portrait of Hollywood's myth and an extraordinary woman's heartbreaking reality, Blonde is a sweeping epic that pays tribute to the elusive magic and devastation behind the creation of the great 20th century American star. Okay. So again, the word myth has been brought up so many times, and like even Hollywood spectacle. So okay.
Yeah.
Um so I haven't read the book in full. Elizabeth has. So like definitely I want you to weigh in if there's moments when we're talking about the film that resonate with how Joyce Carol Oates presents it in her narrative. But well, first, do you feel that the film did a uh realistic representation of the novel? Like, is the
Yes.
film pretty accurate?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Now, I haven't had the time to reread the whole book recently, but I was leafing through it again and familiarizing myself with it. And I absolutely think, for the most part, that that the film really captured at least what I took away from the book. And the thing, what I generally tend to focus on is sort of tone and a general like feeling. And with with that, the film really knocked it out of the park, I think. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
I feel like the film, yeah, I'll start with my cards on the table with the
Yeah.
strengths right away. I thought the score was so bewitching. Like, talk about witchcraft. I thought
Oh
that
my God.
the score,
It
the
was.
music is just really devastatingly beautiful in all of its
Yes.
nuances. Even how they
Yes.
incorporate Marilyn's songs to fit the themes.
Yes. Right. It's
So
done in a very creative, unusual way. Nothing about it
yeah.
is obvious, really.
Yeah, and I think that definitely this is one of the most psychological movies I've seen in a very long time. Um, there's definitely a lot of innovative cinematography, like from even when a wardrobe is open and your point of view as the viewer is from the wardrobe and it like being
Yes.
slammed and you can see the Norma Jean's mom's verbal abuse and it's like coming from the
Yes.
wardrobes. Like we're not actually seeing
Yes.
it we're not seeing it from their
Right.
perspective. And
Right.
I thought that was really interesting, all of
That was
those.
incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that went on throughout the duration of the whole film. And I loved that. And I really appreciated that. And you know what? I think this didn't occur to me until you said it, but I think that you're right. It's the cinematography and the inventiveness on that level. I haven't, it's kind of sad, but I haven't seen that in a long time in
Yes.
movies. Do you know what I mean? That what I see is the downfall of cinema has been, that's a whole different other conversation. But it was so, one of the things that I loved about this film was that it was so refreshing to see that, because
Yes.
that it hasn't, there really haven't been, it hasn't been that sort of thing in quite a while. And that was just wonderful. And another thing that happened along those lines was that shifting from black and white into color.
Yes, you're right. That happens a lot of times with even the Arthur Miller, when she meets Arthur Miller and she's in the actor's
Yes.
studio, and then
Yes.
they're taken out of that frame into Connecticut.
Yes.
Another
And then
thing
it's in
is,
color.
yeah, then it's in color. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, okay, so the music I was blown away by. First of all, Ana de Armas I thought was one of the best Monroes I've seen ever.
Agree. Yeah.
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 I mean, I
Agree.
loved My Week with Marilyn with
Me too. Me
yes,
too. Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams, thank you. But
Yeah.
again, but that's like such a small slice when she's in The Prince and the Showgirl, right?
Right.
In
Right.
England. So like that's so different than this fictional biopic.
Yes.
But yeah, okay, so the beginning, right? So at the beginning, we start with Norma Jean's mother's mental health deterioration.
Yes.
And
Yes. And
yeah.
little Norma Jean is maybe 7 or 8. You know, she's a little girl at this point.
Yeah, so how did you find how the mother is portrayed at the beginning?
I thought that was incredible. It was, of course, it was like a lot of things. I think in this film, parts of it are very difficult to watch, because of just the content. But you mentioned that the actress Anna Damas, who played Marilyn, is fantastic, and so I think that Julianne Nicholson, who was cast
Yeah.
as Gladys Baker, was amazing in this. The film was just really well cast and well acted in general.
It was.
But I really, really liked that the director's choice to go into detail about Marilyn's childhood, and that harrowing scene with driving into the fire. That's actually a scene from the Joyce Carol Oates book, and that's one of the when I say that the film really captured the book very well, that's one of the scenes that I was thinking of. So that was, I thought that was incredible, and again, like, I think that the relationship between young Norma Jean and Gladys was done with enough with compassion.
Yes. So even when Ana de Armas plays Marilyn older, we get all of those nuances of this complex relationship between mom, daughter, and Marilyn trying to put her boundaries up, but still being the caretaker. So I thought that was, I would say that was the highlight. I think the mother-daughter relationship was definitely really so nuanced, so well done.
Yes,
and
yes,
like,
and it really was
together.
Nuanced because I think that with a lot of biographies of Marilyn, interpretations of Marilyn's story, either you get her relationship with Gladys in her childhood sort of painted in this grotesque, horrible sort of way, or kind of just dismissed. And this was a very nuanced portrait of it, because it was terrifying, but like I said, it was done with compassion. You didn't, as a viewer, you don't go away thinking, oh my God, Gladys is a hideous monster. It's not that way at all. So I really, really loved that too.
Yeah. Okay. So we have looked at the mother-daughter relationship. I have a journal that I kept my notes in, and eventually we'll turn to our text. And I do have a few people who've weighed in, because this film, talk about a divided audience. I looked at the Rotten Tomato. It's like 49% like. And
it's like a polarizing.
It's so polarizing. I feel like
Yeah.
either people have really have been captivated and loved the portrayal, or they are completely against what happened. So this might be one of the elements. I think that's definitely the most polarizing, which is well, actually, before that, there was a quote that the mom says that I really loved. It's in 1933 at the beginning of the film. And I said that it was really goosebump inspiring when the mother says it's California. You can't tell what's real and what's yourself.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And those scenes with the mom were really, I wrote that they were ominous and frightening, because
they absolutely were. And like I said, that driving into the fire scene, You know, and I really think that, you know, bring up what she said about California. It gives you, you know, of course, California and Los Angeles, that's a character too in this film. And I think that it's very, very well done and well explored. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like that the film starts in the 1930s, because you get this earlier depiction of like the sort of outskirts of Hollywood at that point, and the fire, and you know, it gives a history, like that history of Hollywood behind it, that I really like.
Yeah, and you also see her upbringing, which is working class, very working
Yes.
class Hollywood.
Yes.
And even like her neighbors, where, and I know that does come from her biography, with
Right.
the couple who was like going to take her in but couldn't take her in, so she ends up in the foster care
Oh God,
system.
yeah, and she's
And
just dropped off there with a
yeah,
suitcase, and it's
it's so devastating. And she's like,
heartbreaking.
but I have a mother.
I'm
I'm
not an
not an
orphan.
orphan. And like, you can, that's something in the film I feel like as an audience member I could always relate to Norma Jean. Like, I could always see where she's coming from.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I do think there was a lot of her interiority, a lot of her psyche explored.
There really was, and that's another reason why one of the things that I loved about the film. I tend to like that about any sort of film, when that interior is explored. If it isn't at all, then I'm not going to be as interested. Um, and there was a lot of that in this, in Blonde. Now, that being said, one of the one of the things
Yeah,
that I
go for it.
feel like was a missed opportunity here, given the fact that this film really did go into like Marilyn's her interior landscape, really, a lot of the time. I wish that we would have seen the a different side of that interior landscape, and specifically, I mean, you know, they certainly touch upon the fact that she was very well read, but we
Yeah.
don't. I would have liked to see her reading, see her think about books in an imaginative way, not just have her quote them to men and have those men not believe her. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, like she mentions a lot of Chekhov, especially like the Three
Chekhov,
Sisters.
Dostoevsky, yes.
Yeah, Dostoevsky. But like you're right, we have documented images of her reading Ulysses on set, or
Right,
reading
right.
Song of Myself by reading Leaves of Grass by Whitman in her
Whitman.
bed. Like these
Right.
are
We have her entire all the books listed in her library. We know
you're
that
right.
she was a reader. She sat
Yeah.
around reading all the time. I don't
Yeah.
think there was a single book in the movie.
That's
Just her
true.
mentioning them to men and the men not believing her, which absolutely happened. But I feel like an opportunity was missed there, in terms of like, just the enjoyment of seeing Marilyn read and imagine.
Yeah. But I have to say, I know that must have been maybe not the library cataloging of Maryland that we do have. We have her notes, we have like her marginalia. But I also, it seems like as a film they did not want props at all. Like it was a very sparsely
Oh, that's true. That's
sparse
interesting.
film.
I
Like,
hadn't
yeah.
that hadn't occurred to me, but you're right.
That whole setup with the movie premieres, like, why do you think that we were getting that same stock image of like, okay, big theater, kind of center screen, and then usually before the movie would premiere, we would have such an intense traumatic moment, and then we would
Right.
get the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt there was like a stillness to it, and it felt like in slow motion and very stylized. What I thought about that too, and I guess what I was thinking was, was it a way of sort of in how do I say this? Was it a way of saying that those movie premieres did not feel real to Marilyn? Like maybe that didn't feel like her real self, or do you know what I'm saying? Like it
And
felt
she
like she
breaks
was somebody
down.
else.
You're
Yes.
right. She breaks down at Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and
Oh,
she
yes.
is like, that's
Yeah.
not me. I'm not Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And
she had the same experience during the premiere of The 7-Year Itch, actually, similar experience. So
yeah.
she really disliked those premieres. In fact, most of the ones that I'm thinking of, for whether it was one thing or the other, she just had a really bad experience at them.
Yeah. So she's quoted, Elizabeth, like talking about
Yes.
her response to film premieres.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because what we're really, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I think that, so I think that there was kind of like maybe a stylistic choice to show sort of the unreality of it for her in a slightly disturbing way, maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, what we're doing right now is a real fact versus fiction, which I think is, of course, I think some people, I would say the general audience thinks this is fact. And maybe that's why
I
it's so
know.
polarizing. Like, because
Right.
they're like, well, but this isn't the Marilyn that we were taught, or is this actually true? Like, I've already seen so many
Right.
articles about, is this real in Marilyn's life?
Right. Especially
Yeah.
the Charlie Chaplin's son
Oh
threesome with
my,
the
yes.
Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
And now, a message from the Gay and Lesbian Review.
Hello, listeners. This is Stephen Hemrick, the publisher of the GNLR, here with a special offer just for you. For those of you who aren't familiar with the GNLR, let me provide a little background. The GLR is a bi-monthly magazine of history, culture, and politics that publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines, as well as a slew of reviews of books, plays, and movies, and a number of special features such as artists' profiles and the popular art memo column. Each issue brings you consistently intelligent, lively, thought-provoking articles focused on a unifying theme and brings together the leading minds on the topic. You won't find a lot about the latest dating fads or fashion trends, though you might find articles about online dating as a social phenomenon or the gay influence on 20th century fashion. For example, the theme of the current issue is Queens and Kings, and it features an article by Andrew Holleran about Truman Capote's relationships with glamorous women, the women he called his swans. Now for the special offer. When you subscribe, you'll receive a free copy with any print or digital subscription. That's 7 issues instead of 6. Visit glreview.org. That's glreview.org. Click subscribe and enter promo code ITBR for your free issue. And as an added bonus, you'll receive online access to all archived issues of the magazine.
Hi, it's Mary from True Crime and Academia.
If you're like me, you love personalized merch and you love shopping local. So here is one of my favorite local vendors to buy from. It's Mandy Made It. That's MANDEE Made It. My friend Mandy makes the most incredible personalized crochet goods and decor for your home. Spooky season is coming up. She has some of the coolest Halloween designs. So go follow her on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Mandy Made It. Again, that's MANDEE Made It. And place your order with her today.
So the Charlie Chaplin, and I have it. And I think it was like Edward Robinson Jr.
Right.
Yeah, they're both juniors.
I even started looking that up because I was like, wait, did I miss something? That actually was an aspect of this film that I enjoyed. That was I did not think that I mean, I liked seeing that.
Yeah, I liked their acting relationship. I will say, yes, there's like a very threesome sexually charged moment that happens, but again, this is where, like, as a viewer, you really have to parse, is Marilyn having control over her sexual body, or is she being abused by the men around her? And I think, like, clearly there's the casting director at the beginning, which is real.
I actually had to turn it off after that point and then come back to the film, because that and the JFK scene were the worst. The absolute, the JFK scene was even worse, I think, for me to witness than the casting director. But those were so, I mean, for lack of they're very triggering to watch, you know, it's very hard to watch.
Yeah, and my friend who weighed in, her name's Parker. She called this, she was reacting so viscerally in the trauma porn ways. There's like these trauma porn moments and
oh God, yeah.
Like, or actual sexual abuse moments, right? So like that casting director, and like we get flashbacks of it when she's talking to Joe DiMaggio about he's like, how did you get your start in the
oh gosh, and then we have to
business?
see that moment again, you know. with the casting. We were talking about the cast, the Charlie Chaplin stuff.
And, so what, like,
and the issue of agency and her own, you know, her like whether Marilyn had agency in that moment. And for my take on it was that was one of the times where I did see her having control in that whole relationship, threesome type relationship, if you want to call it that. It might not have been the healthiest of relationships in some ways, but it was one that I sort of enjoyed watching because all three of them seemed equals in a way. There wasn't one person didn't seem to be taking advantage of another person. There were really playful moments when they were calling themselves the Geminis on the beach. In this, and I don't know if the sex scenes between, you know, the three of them were one of the reasons why this movie was rated NC-17, but those scenes did not bother me at all. They were not hard to watch or anything like that. I thought, and also I love the actor Xavier Samuel. I thought he was fascinating.
Which one was he?
He played Cass Chaplin.
Oh yeah, he was very good.
He's just a great actor.
And she was friends, like she knew Charlie Chaplin Jr.
They dated briefly.
Crowd. Oh, they dated briefly. Okay. Yeah.
Very, very briefly. It probably wasn't even a big thing, but they dated and they remained friendly afterwards. And she knew Ed Robinson. So, and I thought that's the type of thing. And of course the Joyce Carol Oates book that, you know, the way that it comes across in the film is very faithful to the book in a lot of ways. And that's why I think that the whole genre of fictional biography is very appealing as a writer to, I'm like, I want to write something like this someday, because you get to speculate and come up with your own sort of, you know, things. And I think that that's really interesting, of course, but many people, and you see online, this didn't really happen, you know, so there's a lot of people who it's can't really parse out the difference between the biography and the fictional biography, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, but I do think like there's this moment I wrote about Every Baby Needs a Daddy is one of Marilyn's songs. But like this is a constant theme of like her calling men daddy, which I was even like, did she have a Oedipal like a Electro-Freudian complex about calling men daddy because she didn't have a father that she knew, right? But this is something we're supposed to psychoanalyze with her,
right?
And it almost plays into this, like the sugar daddy. I don't know. I was really having a hard time understanding this moment in the film.
Do you feel like that the whole daddy thing sort of was distracting in a way because for those reasons, because it can't help but invite very, very blatant psychoanalysis, and it was really, I sort of think that the whole father complex, the daddy complex, the Oedipal thing is a kind of easy trope to fall back upon.
Yeah.
And Joyce Carol Oates and this director, they're not the first ones to do it with Marilyn. It's very, I think it's obvious. I think it's a little bit lazy. And I think it's worst of all, it's distracting because it kind of takes away from everything else. So that's one thing I could have done without a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Parker weighed in about, well, first she reacted the same way to what you viscerally reacted to with that triggering moment with the producer, Elizabeth.
Yes.
She said Marilyn deserved more than that. Very disappointed with the blithering mess they made her out to be in the weird baby scene. I am beyond
Oh, the
confused.
baby
Okay,
stuff,
the
the
baby
fetus and
scene.
oh my God. And then when I
That-
thought the fetus stuff was over, it's happened again. And then we've got a talking fetus. And it just
I mean,
can't.
I do have to say that has probably polarized the viewer the most is
I
the
would
abortion
imagine.
scenes. And
Right.
but I do have to say, I do know, like I do remember reading that Marilyn had very conflicting feelings about children, and like there
Yeah.
was a miscarriage, like there was loss of
Oh,
children.
she definitely
Yeah.
had miscarriages, and you have to remember she had a pretty severe case of endometriosis. So that
Oh.
was her health issues were really wrapped up in, you know, her miscarriages, whether she wanted to have children, the mental health issues.
Yeah.
But I think, and I couldn't help but think, oh God, I don't want it. The talking fetus thing was just, it felt disturbing. It felt campy almost. And then it felt kind of, do we really need in 2022 to have, with everything that's going on with you know, women's health?
Yeah, that's what a film critic wrote. They're like, this is feeding into anti-abortion narratives with
Right.
the talking baby. I mean, again, though, I think I'm not going to defend the talking fetus, but I do think, I will say, I thought that like the first time her abortion in this film, the fictional account, happens, having the baby found in a drawer in the fire, like really recalls the opening with her manic mother
Yes.
in the fire. So like I thought that worked actually really
It did.
well.
Yes.
Now, when it got to like the baby talking at the end,
Floating around in the embryonic
Yes.
fluid. Well, then
But I
there
have
was
a
the
lot of
talking baby with the
feelings.
Arthur Miller. That was the
Yeah.
just, oh,
But I have a lot of feelings with, I would say, the last 20 minutes of the film. I felt like we were getting a completely different film. Like I have to say, I was so drawn and loving the first hour and a half. Like I would say
oh, me too.
right until she's with Arthur Miller. And who's the friend that she meets through Arthur Miller in Connecticut? Because you write about this relationship.
Oh,
I
you
think.
mean the couple, the Rostons?
The couple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering if they were if the couple that came to visit them, and is that when Arthur's saying, Marilyn, why aren't you coming to the beach with us? And then she has the
Yes.
miscarriage. I think that was probably Norman Roston and his wife Hedda. But again, and this is where I kind of feel like missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Marilyn befriended Norman Roston and Hedda Roston on her own. And another thing that I feel like we didn't get were Marilyn's friendships. She was
Yes.
not I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. She felt so comfortable with Norman Roston. She called him Claude. Felt very accepted by him. She knew that Norman Roston appreciated her as an intellectual equal. She was not terrified of them, of the Rostons.
Yeah.
So that was an issue. But do you kind of feel like up until the Arthur Miller point, that after the Arthur Miller point, we sort of got a slightly different film?
I do. I actually have to say, I think the Joe DiMaggio aspect was probably the best representation of Joe DiMaggio and Monroe.
Yeah, I think so too.
Of like the controlling issue he had, especially when she has that Lexington Avenue, 52nd Street subway great moment with the publicity for 7 Year Itch, and then like his actual anger towards her. I mean, now that abusive moment, the rage, like you
that
could
was
really
true.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also, you could tell he did not want her as a woman to outshine his stardom in baseball.
Right. And all of that was very true because, there was an age difference there. And, as Joe DiMaggio had recently retired at that point. So he was and Marilyn's star was rising. And I feel like he was very uncomfortable with that. And at the same time, I think it was a great interpretation and again, like perfect casting there,
Yeah, he was Bobby
Cannavale.
Cannavale. He's from
he was
Broadway.
Great.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
He's fantastic. And I think that he also communicated, and maybe this is controversial for me to say, but with someone I do think that he loved Marilyn and cared about her in his own messed up way, and I think that came through as well.
Yes.
It was a nuanced sort
Yeah.
of
Well,
portrayal.
so maybe Elizabeth, you can explain to me. We constantly keep seeing her handlers, and one of them is like a healer or is the one to calm her down, and
Oh,
he's like,
Whitey, the makeup guy. That
okay,
was
the
her
makeup
makeup
artist.
artist.
Yes. Who is
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who that was.
Oh gosh, I wish I could remember his last name. I was running around looking for my Marilyn biographies, but then I realized that I had them at my parents' house. I forget his last name, but he was with her for the duration of her career.
Yeah, I liked his
And
relationship with her a
I
lot.
loved her. I think that was could have been the only relationship that we saw that was one of Marilyn's good friendships.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
rest of the relationships were just kind of abusive relationships, but here we saw a very accurate and very
yeah.
warm representation of her
Yeah.
friendship with
And
him.
was he gay, Elizabeth?
Yes,
Okay. Well,
I
I
think
say that
so.
because what I feel like was a missed opportunity, which is how I always feel with Marilyn's narrative, except in Elizabeth's biography, but is her progressive views. Like, again,
Yes,
why are we not
again.
getting that she was on the McCarthy list and like
Right.
part of this witch
I
hunt?
was shocked we didn't get any of that, especially there would
No.
have been a real opportunity to go into it, especially with the Arthur Miller stuff,
Yes.
but there was nothing. And
Again,
I thought,
I
did I
feel
miss
like
something?
Arthur Miller, I feel like they kind of stopped writing. I don't, because I'm assuming with Joyce Carol Oates, she digs deep into the Arthur Miller
She does.
dynamic.
She
Yes.
really does. And I
Whereas
actually
the
think that she's
film,
kind of accurate there.
yeah. And
What
I'm
did
like,
you
what's
think of
happening? I'm like, where? Because that to me wasn't really the dynamic with Arthur Miller. Like, there's so much more
there's
that
so much
happens.
more there. And I think that one of the things that the film did, in my opinion, was you sort of have in the film her the whole thing was handled pretty quickly.
Yes.
And you sort of you get the feeling that their relationship ended because Marilyn kind of detached from him in terms of like pills, alcohol, and just kind of going deeper and deeper into her own darkness. And that really wasn't the case. I think that it was much more complicated than that. And she felt very betrayed by him.
Yeah.
There's a tendency, certainly not just with this film, but in general, to sort of portray Arthur Miller as like the good guy, and I don't really hold that to be entirely true.
No, but I do have to say, when he did question her about, well, how do you know this about my play? How do you know Chekhov? How do you know this character in Three
That was
Sisters?
interesting, wasn't it?
That felt very realistic from conversations I've had with my friend who's a Miller scholar, and she got to interview him. That like
Oh
when
my
it came,
gosh, really?
yeah, like
Wow.
in the 90s in Connecticut in his country house. Well,
Oh
in the
wow.
house, yeah,
The
where
Roxbury
yes,
house.
yes. But and I said, like, did you get into Marilyn? But I know apparently he was so uncomfortable with questions about Marilyn, which
Definitely, yeah.
I
And
can
that's
understand.
understandable, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say from everything like my
I loved that
friend.
scene that you're talking about, by the
Yes,
way.
yes, yes.
He
But
was
like,
Arthur, he seems so
yes.
intense. And
And he
I really
does.
like that.
And it seems realistic in that relationship because from what I've heard, like he liked her raw intellect, but didn't
Yes.
really want her to be an intellect. Like he didn't want her to
Yes.
claim her knowledge, but kind of just like be a Venus. Like,
Yes.
oh, I know
Yes.
Dostoevsky. Oh, I know James Joyce. But it's
Right.
like you said, we don't actually get the material. We don't see her absorbing.
Right. And it
And
was almost kind of like she was this we don't see, that's why I kind of wanted to see her reading. And I think
yes,
you're really right when you talk about Arthur Miller loving her raw intellect. He absolutely appreciated her for so much more than her charm and her physical looks. But it was almost like he wanted her like this sort of angelic child who just kind of happened to know these things,
yeah.
rather than someone who creates actually in
Yeah.
her own right.
Well, and I will say though, there is that moment where she feels betrayed because she's been having this intimate conversation about what it means for him to be a writer. And he's borrowed word for word
Yes,
their
their
dialogue. And
dialogue.
she's
She
like,
sees it typed up.
yes, yes. And she's like, well, writers always, I don't trust them because they take from my conversations, and he's like, I would never do that to you. And again,
And then there we see it.
Yes, and she's his muse. That to me is
Yes.
what's like, she is Beatrice. She is
Yes.
you know, the Greek goddess who just is the inspiration. And I think it's all there in the film. It is. It's
Because
really
we
there.
see him obsessing over Magda in the beginning. That's their first glimpse of him. He almost seems like a crazy man, you know. He's like Magda, the Magda's Marilyn. It's like he's always a man who needs a muse.
Yeah, so like Magda is his character.
I think that, and he has a picture of a woman with Magda written on it from the 1930s. And remember in the conversation, he says, "Oh, Magda would be 55 today." So I got the feeling that Magda was based on a woman in his real life.
Oh, in his real life. Okay.
But
he was married, wasn't he, before Marilyn?
Esther?
Yes. He mentions a woman named Esther.
He does, but I actually can't remember if that Esther was the name of his wife before Marilyn. I forget.
Let me see. I'm gonna look it up. I think okay, we have Mary Grace Slattery is before Marilyn.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And he was still married when he got together with Marilyn.
Oh, okay.
Not that that's big of a deal, but
no, but and then he does marry after Marilyn.
Oh, that's right. He does a photographer, right?
Yeah, he marries Inga.
Yeah.
But yeah,
kind of the opposite of Marilyn.
Yeah, in 1956, he leaves Mary Slattery and weds Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
Yeah, but well, and also another aspect that's never shown is that Marilyn actually converts to Judaism because of
That's right. I had forgotten about that. Yes.
And because of the religion. She was like actually very connected to Jewish culture.
She was. And she was very interested in it.
With the Strasbergs too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And
we don't see that's something we don't. Where are the Strasbergs?
So we don't get the Strasbergs and we don't get Milton Green. And those
that upsets me.
And that is, you know, obviously that really upsets me. That's what almost my entire book was about, those relationships. Of course, it was about more than that. But, you know, you get these images of her at the actor's studio, but we don't, but that almost seemed in the context of the film Blonde as a way to insert Arthur Miller.
Yes.
You know, whereas the reality is, Marilyn didn't meet Arthur Miller really through the actor's studio. Arthur Miller didn't have that much to do with the actor's studio. Marilyn was studying very seriously at the actor's studio, and I don't know how much that really comes across in the film.
Yeah, well, does Joyce Carol Oates talk about Milton Green in Blonde?
I don't remember. I was actually looking through the many pages of the book last night.
Yeah, it's a long book, everyone.
It is.
It's a
and
madness.
Of course, when I originally read the book, I had no idea who Milton Green was, so I didn't remember. But I don't think that she mentions him. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah,
I will never stop being upset about how Marilyn writers tend to just gloss over that whole relationship, because I still think that Milton Green was the love of Marilyn's life. and
just for everyone out there. Well, they need to listen to Elizabeth, your interview with us on Marilyn in Manhattan with, is it 1954?
1955, although the book starts in 54 and ends in 56.
Okay. So, yeah, right at the end of 54 to 56, that's like the Manhattan years. But so Milton Green again is who, just for everyone out there, Elizabeth?
Milton Green was a very good friend of Marilyn's, and he actually, in 1955, he helped her start her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions.
Oh, and we don't get that.
She completely humiliated Fox Studios and Daryl Zanuck by just fleeing Hollywood, starting her own production company, breaking the contract, and it was very clear that she was not afraid of them. We don't get any of that.
So why do you think, like, as a viewer, we should be seeing Marilyn Monroe's production company?
Absolutely.
That's the narrative that's not out there in other films. Like,
right. It's an interesting narrative to tell. Not just it's incredibly important, but it's also full of drama, and it's very compelling. I mean, from the very beginning, she and Milton Green have to sneak out of LA in the middle of the night.
Yes.
like
That's where
she's
your
wearing like a
biography
trench coat and a
begins.
wig, you
I
know? That's
love your yes, I love when you do that in your biography. Like Elizabeth has such evocative language at the start of her biography. But again, instead we get what I'll go there, which is the pill popping. I don't know what's happening with the JFK hotel scene. That
Oh
was
God, that was.
so upsetting, and she can't even walk. I'm like,
I was honestly like kind of watching out of the half looking. My eyes were almost averted because that was so difficult for me to watch. Oh
so
God.
yeah. So why do you think they show this with JFK and
You know,
the sex scene with him, but instead we
oh
don't get
God.
her actual production company? Like,
Right, right. I know. And this is the whole reason why I wrote my book, Marilyn Manhattan, in
yes,
the first place. It's because almost every time, someone, 80% of the time, Marilyn Monroe, the first thing that they say, so is it true that she slept with JFK? And I'm thinking, out of all of the things that you could ask about this,
yeah. Yeah.
it's very
So it's just
frustrating.
this like, and I was actually scared that there was like she was going to be brought to the hotel room and his brother was going to be there too. I'm like,
Oh
oh,
God,
please don't do
it could have been even worse. Right. I know.
Do you think it's because of that trauma porn type like they think the public is going to really eat it up? Because I don't think the public is eating those elements up from what I've seen with
I think
reviews.
if the public's eating that up, I think it's sick. Now, I mean, I'm somebody who watches some pretty dark stuff. Yet
Yeah.
somehow and it was the JFK scene that was actually the worst for me. I could not, I couldn't even do it. I think that there's probably an element of trauma porn, and then I think that even bigger than that, somehow the public is just fascinated with JFK and Marilyn Monroe, the idea of them together. To me, that is the least interesting thing about her life and
Yeah.
about the whole Marilyn mythology. Even so what? So what? She slept with the president. Who cares?
But Elizabeth, tell us more about this JFK and Maryland hot take. Why do you think the public is so infatuated with this narrative? Why does the film continue to perpetuate this? And what are your hot takes? Well, Elizabeth does not hold back because there's another 30-minute discussion that I just didn't have time to put here because it's on our Patreon. We talk about why is the film NC-17? We get into topics around nudity. We get topics around the threesome that happens in the film. There's so much more that I just didn't have time to put here. So, to listen to the full conversation, I know I just said full twice, but there's so much to it. Head to our Patreon, patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Join for $5 a month and you get this 30-minute discussion as a bonus audio. You get access to the Gregory Maguire Wicked movie musical news. Gregory Maguire has updates about the Wicked movie musical that are here at the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Mary DePippi has her True Crime and Academia bonus episodes. There's at least 4 of them, including the Charles Lindbergh baby kidnapping, JonBenet Ramsey's cold case. And she just released one yesterday. So please head there. Also, every episode has a video episode. Watch all of our videos, including the blonde episode in its entirety. So less than a cup of iced coffee, less than a nice cappuccino. There's so many coffee shops on Long Island that I frequent. You all out there know which ones they are. I post them on my Instagram, where I also post some gay thirst traps, but that's a different story. You could follow me on Instagram, though, at Andrew David Rimby. While you're at it, why don't you follow our Instagram at Ivory Tower Boiler Room to see our amazing video teasers? Also, TikTok has some really great videos at Ivory Tower Boiler Room, including I'm going to post some where I'm singing because we have some more Broadway musical episodes coming. Yes, I post some thirsty videos there. We have excellent video teasers done by our amazing interns. I want to shout them out. Andrea, Chris. Also on the intern team is Taj and Rosie. Thank you to Kim, our Ivory Tower Boiler Room film audio editor. Thank you to Mary, our chief contributor. She also does all things true crime and academia and hosts that show. And yes, I'm Andrew Rimby, the director and the host of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. On that note, everyone, have a great fall. And whew, was this an uncensored episode or what? Hey, do you want me to do more of these film analyses, more of these dissections of what's going on in pop culture with film? I'd love to bring on a previous guest. So let me know. Reach out to me in the comments. Okay. Bye everyone.
And every time your lips meet mine, darling, down and down I go, round and round I go, in a spin, love and a spin.